I remember meeting Dan, and I think it was Bob Costello and Leela, I think. And I forget where it was, but I remember the office. I remember the place where I auditioned, and I think, I'm not sure, but I think I probably taped something for them. I can't remember. Or I was in a play with Lee Remick on Broadway, so that they Wait Until Dark, so they came and saw that. So I guess it was, and I was kind of a hot shot in those days, I think, anyway, sort of unbeknownst to everybody. But I remember I was very impressed with Dan. He was always very interesting and strange. But I remember the real impressions I have are going up to Connecticut, where we filmed pre to doing the show. We filmed some segments, the train station and walking down dark streets, and I guess some of the exteriors of the big mansion house or something. And I remember that's when I met Alexandra, and I think Kathy Scott. We were up there, and Joan and Louis, I think, were up there too. And it was wonderful because I hadn't done much film in those days, so it was great to go out and do some location filming on the. I'd never done a soap opera either, but that's totally different from what we shot up there. So when we came back and then did the show, which was I think shortly after that, did the first show, which was a live tape, and I can't remember where the studio was. It was on 50th, somewhere around there, somewhere, but it was a teeny little place, marvelous little. All the sets were jacked on top of each other and everything, and it became quite a company. I'm amazed as I'm running down these names of Thayer David and Joan Bennett and Dennis Patrick and Joel Crothers and Conrad Bain, and God, we're all such old pirates now. It's like we were all such little kids with no gray hair in those days. It's amazing that we've all had great longevity in this business, which is amazing too. I think I enjoyed that show quite a bit for quite some time. I had a hard time with the grind, because I was in every day, and I was also doing a play at night, which is not a very good idea to do double duty when you work 18 hours a day. It sort of knocks your brains out. I remember one. I'm trying to remember how all the relationships of everything. That Kathy Scott was the sort of town good girl or something, hung around. She took care of she worked at the hotel, is that what it was? Yeah. And then Thayer David, I remember, who is an incredible actor. Is he still with us? No, he died. Yes, I thought he did. Yeah. He was this fabulous actor, sort of in the sort of Laird Krieger, sort of Lon Chaney kind of mold. And I can't remember what he was. I know he was hanging around the big mansion and doing something or other, but can't remember. But he had this strange character. You know, and at first, of course, obviously that it was a Gothic melodrama. I mean, it was a romance of ports, which a mystery, sort of nobody knew exactly who did what to who and what was going on and everything. This is for 6 months or so before the first sort of supernatural thing started coming in. I guess the first one was the fire. Diana Malay was married to Roger. Is that how it was? And her son, she was trying to snatch him into the other world. And I guess Alexandra and I saved her somehow. I forget that exactly. Remember, that was a big dramaturgy there for a while. But that was the first sort of supernatural indications, I think, as I remember. Then it sort of went on from there to Jonathan, and I left the show shortly after that. I was there for about a year, I guess, because I was there when he came in. So, and he came in about, I think it was about a year, less than a year, maybe 10 months or something. And then I guess I can't remember whether we were doing sort of holding our own and doing all right until then. But then, when that started, then was there a Wolfman too? I mean, it was sort of a sorts, and then there was. Then they went back in time, and there was sort of which was all kind of wonderful and kind of glittery and marvelous, and sort of worked that way. There was. Since it was shot live, taped live, there were a lot of funny stories. I remember one was I was doing a scene with a microphone, a microphone. That's what I said. Doing with a microscope with another guy, and I said, "What do you see in the microphone?" Now, why we couldn't fix that, I don't know, but I guess you can't do pickups in those days, 100 years ago. But anyway, Dennis Patrick thought that was quite good because he said that's very logical because you've got to hear the little buggers, right? So, which I thought was kind of funny. I remember I had one scene one time with Nancy Barrett, who was always sort of coming on to me because I was kind of sort of after Alexandra, so. But she was always sort of getting in the way, and her boyfriend was always wanting to fight me in the bar somewhere. But anyway, we had this sort of real hot scene on the sofa in I guess it was in my apartment or at the hotel. And somehow I thought the scene should be over, but there wasn't any call for cut or that's it or roll it, so we just kept on going with and sort of, I mean, it was getting real warm, and finally I got up. I stood up and said, "Well, I think we should think about it." But I hadn't realized that we left about a half a page of dialogue out, which they were waiting to get in, I guess. But those kind of things were happening all the time, that kind of sort of back and forth, kind of forgetting where you are. It still happens, I guess. Although now they have these great tape machines where they can stop and start things back and forth. And I remember there were because there still are a lot of bloopers and stuff. Now they race them out, but before this, I guess they did it totally live. Actually, we had done it that time. There was like U.S. Steel Hour. It was right before that, or actually some years before that. I had done several of those, and the old Kraft theaters where they were live, total live, complete live. I did with Albert Salmi, where he came back to life after he'd been shot dead. It was a wonderfully written Gothic kind of melodrama, and Burke was this marvelous, mysterious character, and actually there wasn't a whole lot to do with it except bring a lot of my passion to it and just allow it to come out, because he was caught, as I remember, between revenge and sort of letting it all go, and so it was difficult for him to get, and that was a very interesting aspect to play, that kind of ambivalence that he had, and also this sort of really tender feeling he had for Alexandra. And also he had a great feeling for David Ford. I forget the name of his part. Sam, was it? Yeah. Who was a sculptor, wasn't he, or something, or a painter? Yeah, a painter, and he would go and sit with him, and they would drink and talk. And I remember there was a very interesting kind of relationship between them, and I liked David very much, and so we sort of worked this kind of thing out in kind of a wonderful way. I remember Joel Crothers, who was a wonderful actor. He played a part on it for a while, and of course Dennis Patrick, who was really just fine and marvelous, and Joan, who was just a lovely, the grand lady, the old grand lady of the movies, and Louis Edmonds, who I worked later on in All My Children with for about 6 months. I did a stint on that some years later, and we laughed a lot about Dark Shadows and about the old days. There's just so far you can sort of stretch a Gothic melodrama in the tension of it. You have to constantly bring people in, and what a perfect setting to bring in the bizarre and the sort of and having no idea that it would work. I mean, I suppose Dan had an inkling or felt something about it, but I had no idea that it would take off like it did, and that it would be such a extraordinary thing. You know, but it certainly, I had a feeling, and I think of several other people, I don't want to speak for them, but I think as I remember, there was a kind of a general talk about, you know, how many these sort of boom kind of melodramatic, Gothic kind of romantic kind of strange mysteries can you go through without having these incredible, bizarre sort of vampire, you know, phoenix kind of things, you know, and not knowing, and then going back in time, which was a wonderful kind of marvelous thing, which is, everybody loves that anyway. I mean, that seemed to have really helped the situation quite a bit too. And then it ran, you know, it really took off then. I mean, it really, I don't know, can't remember the ratings, or they had ratings in those days, but it seemed to be doing a lot better, you know. Not that it was doing bad, but that it seemed to really get everybody's attention then. David Hennessy, who played Louis' son, I had several shows with him, or more than that probably. It was a lot of scenes. And he was a marvelous actor, really wonderful. He could turn on the emotion, and he could turn on the tears, and he really was there with you. He really looked you in the eye, and he really talked to you. And as I remember, he was really good. And I don't know how long he stayed with the show. I guess he stayed for a long time. I mean, through the whole run. In those days, this shooting the show straight through was really tough. I mean, you know, you really had to be prepared, and you had to really, and it was hard to be prepared every day, and it was much more difficult. Although there was a great kind of rewarding thing about it. You'd have this sort of feeling of finishing something and going through it and getting it done. And there were a lot of funny things where, you know, the cameras would be moving, and you're doing the scene, and they're over there, you know, and that kind of stuff, you know. But that happened a lot in live television too, in the nighttime stuff there. But now everything's so technical, they can stop and start, and you know, and you can start immediately, and they don't shoot anything straight through. Actually, they don't hardly shoot things in daytime. They hardly shoot anything in order even. They just shoot in order of sets, you know, that kind of thing. And then because they can edit it so fast now, so it doesn't really matter. But there was something about doing it, the whole thing, that had a kind of a bracing kind of feeling to it, and a wholeness that was exhilarating at times, and also frustrating too, and anxiety causing. Popular. I mean, it's a forever popular thing. But something about this show, in its way, I am amazed that it has such longevity. I think that the nighttime network thing that they did was wonderful. I like that. Ben Cross did a wonderful job in that, and Dan did a wonderful job putting that together. I guess it just didn't catch on or something, but it was around a year or something, didn't it? Or 13 or whatever they do, you know. And it's, you know, it is amazing that it's so popular, and that it has, you know, developed a kind of a cult, and sort of people that follow it and work with it. And I haven't been able to make it to one of these conventions or parties or whatever you have. I really wanted to. Last time I just couldn't get down there. And maybe you have them now pretty regular, right? So, you know, I'll probably get another invite maybe.